Welcome everybody. This is the 21 Sensory podcast with me, Emily, and this is episode 17. And this episode I have a special guest on, and it's Thomas from at Aspergers Growth. So Thomas, do you want to say hi?
Hi guys, thank you for having me on, Emily.
No worries. So I was on Thomas's podcast, which is the Thoughty Aughty podcast, which I recommend you check out. I think you've done loads of episodes. How many episodes have you done?
9.
I thought it was more than that, but yours are really long.
Yeah, the actual podcasts are quite long, so I have trouble sort of chopping it down.
And you have lots of guests as well, whereas this is the first time I've had a guest.
Oh, so you've done podcasts which are sort of like you chatting about topics and stuff.
Yeah, it's literally just been me talking. I've never had anyone on because I've never been that organised. But yeah, you said you'd like to come on, and I was like, yay, okay, that would be great.
I think there'd be a lot of, especially on Instagram, I think there'd be a lot of people who would want to come onto your podcast, considering how many episodes you have.
Yeah, I should really kind of ask more people. I think you're definitely more proactive in that sense. You've always got someone kind of new on and stuff, and I need to catch up a bit. So do you want to kind of introduce who you are? Obviously, I've said your Instagram is at Aspergers Growth. Is it Aspergers Growth? Yeah. Do you want to kind of just do a little kind of intro on who you are and sort of when you set up your Instagram and stuff?
That sounds good. So my name is Thomas Henley, and I am a biomedical sciences graduate from the University of Manchester. I'm also a Commonwealth Gold Taekwondo athlete from sort of my previous sporting experience. And I do a lot of work on YouTube, on the Aspergers Growth channel. I make videos about autism and mental health, which primarily draws from my own experiences with life as an autistic person and as a person with quite severe anxiety and depression. And I basically, with the Aspergers Growth channel and the Thoughty Aughty podcast, I try to raise awareness of autism and mental health in a way that is a little bit more personal than just sort of listing off like scientific information like I know some sort of YouTubers do. And I've also got a few sort of channels and Instagram and social medias where I post some, posts about autism and do little Instagram stories and stuff.
Okay. That was a really good introduction. Did a bit of everything there. So let's talk about, what do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about sort of your life a bit more and your diagnosis, or do you want to talk more about your social media and stuff? Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I could give an introduction to my life. I'm not the best with summaries.
That's all right, neither am I.
It's give me a chance to info dump on my life.
Yep, go for it.
So I was born. No, I'm joking. So I was always sort of a bubbly, sort of friendly, very hyperactive kid when I was younger, sort of pre-teenage years. And I never really had any difficulties outside of the odd sort of anxiety around socializing. But I had friends, and I was happy and I was doing well academically. And there was a point where I started to feel a little bit like I was an alien, which I know that is something that many autistic people feel at some point in their life. And and I was struggling to understand, and my parents decided to take me to see a psychologist, or I think occupational therapist maybe. And they put me through some tests and stuff and all that. And my mum took me to the side, took me to McDonald's to get some of them Happy Meals. And nice. Yeah, chicken nuggets and chips, always a good staple diet, Yeah. And she basically just told me that I was autistic, and she explained to me about all the things that autistic people generally find difficult. And I think it was probably the only time in my life up until that point where I'd cried tears of happiness, because it really just pulled everything, all my doubts and all my struggles together into one neat little bundle that I could work on. And it made life a little bit more sort of tolerable and easy to understand. But when I got into high school, I thought that secondary school was going to be, now and again I get sort of picked on by the older students. Now and again I'd have a few fights with some friends and stuff, and that happened for maybe the first 2 or 3 years. But when I got to the age of about 13, 14, I started to develop a lot of anxiety around everything. I became very withdrawn. I became very quiet and shy. And obviously, like people were worried about me, but when you go into teenagehood, it's sort of everyone's going to be different. Everyone's going to be a bit more self-conscious. And I didn't really realize quite to the extent of the anxiety that I felt until I started being picked on and bullied. And I kind of describe it like the feeling that I got when I was in teenagehood. It's like after one summer holiday, everyone had gone away and decided on these weird social rules that I had no clue about, and then came back and I was just in the same sort of spot, and I felt really isolated. I felt like everyone didn't understand me. I didn't understand them. And it generally made life really difficult. And I started to develop a lot of depression. I started self-harming a little bit too much. I developed a lot of sort of body dysmorphia type things like bulimia. And I was not in a good state. And I quit swimming because of the self-harming. I quit everything. So my life literally revolved around a computer and the games that I played on that computer. And at school, I tried to avoid people as much as possible, which honestly sounds like a good idea, but it was more to my detriment because I was obviously very vulnerable. But yeah, I went for a lot of difficulties. I found a sport that I loved. I worked at that. It took a lot of focus. It got rid of a lot of the anxiety that I had. And then I sort of started to progress in that and started to feel better about myself. But there was still that lingering depression and anxiety in the background that made life really difficult. And so, I don't like to mention it because it sort of makes me cringe inside, but there was many times in my life, maybe 2 or 3, where I'd attempted on my own life, and it was hard. I decided to go to uni, and I thought that would help. First year was difficult. Second year was even more so difficult due to a breakup that I had, and it left me feeling very alone and isolated and stuff. And I went down into a slump of depression where I wouldn't go out in weeks. I wouldn't talk to anyone. I didn't have any friends. I had one person that I was friends with who, for some reason or not, decided to sort of leave me. And I went on a whole personal development journey over the course of 2 or 3 years where I was trying to dissect life and myself and my interactions to improve myself. And it was a long journey. I wrote about it every night for hours and hours over the course of about 2 years, and then implemented it when I went to Thailand, and I was sort of in a group of people, a bit more sort of close in terms of proximity, and considering that we were the only British people there. And I came back. I still struggle quite a lot, but obviously my friendships help get rid of the isolation to some extent. And ever since then, I've just found a passion for trying to help people, and I try to help people in what I do because it sort of keeps me afloat.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's my life.
That's your life in a nutshell. I mean, I appreciate how honest and open you're being, because, you know, not all of that is, you know, easy to talk about. And, you know, I appreciate that you're kind of, you know, being very upfront about everything, and, you know, all the struggles along the way. And so how old were you when you had your diagnosis? Were you like 9 or 10 or something, was
Yeah,
it?
10 years old.
10, right, okay. So, I mean, you know, that must have, did you sort of almost feel like it was like a relief at that stage, or did it take a while to sort of sink in
Definitely.
a way?
I think a little bit of both. Like, I didn't really think about it much post that, but at least it gave me something as a reason. And then obviously later on, it sort of helped me understand my life and myself a bit more.
Mm-hmm. And I can totally understand how, I mean, I wasn't subject to the bullying. I was quite, you know, I was able to kind of sink into the background in school, but school is such a difficult environment for anyone who is autistic or sensory or has Aspergers, anything like that. And, you know, like you say, all these social rules you have no idea about, and people come back from, you know, breaks and stuff, and they've changed, and it's, you know, it must be so frustrating and, you know, kind of demoralizing to, I kind of feel it as well, you know, you don't know what's changed and what the rules are anymore. And children can be so cruel to each other, and you underestimate how people can change and stuff. And, you know, I can kind of relate, but obviously not to some extent. But I do wish kind of schools were kind of safer places in that respect. And it's such a shame, because you've gone on to study at uni, and you're clearly very intelligent and clever. And at school, you know, maybe that went under the radar a bit because you were struggling, you know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. 'Cause, you know, people don't really, well, I mean, teachers and head teachers don't really focus on students unless they're falling behind, I suppose.
Exactly. Unless you're kind of like naughty in a lesson or something like that. If you're quiet and you're hardworking, you're never really kind of picked up on. Exactly, are you?
No, unless you do something
But
silly
it's,
like I did.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's amazing that you've been able to, you know, despite your struggles, kind of channel your sort of interests into, you know, sport, and like you're a Commonwealth gold athlete. Like, I think we should say that more.
Yeah,
Like, that's huge.
I don't know.
That's amazing.
It's like one of those things that I feel I do say it, but I always feel a little bit like if I say that, that's the only thing that I am, if that makes sense.
Okay, I see what you mean. I think you've got to shout about it,
Yeah.
because it's a big thing. But I know, like, you don't want it to define you in some ways. But I mean, you are a YouTuber, you are a public speaker, you're a podcaster, you're a, you know, activist for autism and mental health, and, you know, an athlete as well. That's a lot. You've got a lot going on there. You're doing a lot, you know, and you're definitely giving back in terms of, you know, the like kind of online community and stuff.
I'm glad, and I think I really do want to help people. It is as cheesy as it sounds, the main thing that sort of keeps me afloat every day. You know, when I don't feel like there's much point in getting up in the morning, I think about, you know, the kids that I work with at school, and I think about, you know, the people who don't have it as good as me, and don't have those social skills, don't have a friend group, don't have a relationship or a job. And it really breaks my heart to hear about that. And now and again, I get messages from people that, yeah, it's awful, and there's just really nothing that you can do about it other than just try and raise awareness as much as possible and try and get it to the people that, you know, the big media people, so that they can implement it more, you know. But
and I know what you mean. Like it's great to have, you know, that motivation and something to get up for in the morning. Like it's important to have, you know, something to almost kind of focus
Definitely.
on. Is that so? You're working. Am I right in thinking you're working as a special education, like teaching
So
assistant?
I go into special needs schools and I do sort of general supporting there, but then I also go to mainstream schools to support kids with special needs who haven't been moved to special needs education.
Okay, so you're doing a bit of both, really. You're seeing both sides of kind of education in terms of mainstream and kind of special needs sort of
That's what
schools
I
as
want
well.
to do. Yeah, I want to get an idea of it. So it's good having personal experiences, but it's always good to try and experience the whole spectrum, if you will, of
Yeah,
experiences of people on the spectrum.
yeah. I mean, that must be huge in terms of, you know, you're giving back not only online but in actual person as well, in terms of, you know, helping these children. But also, I mean, I imagine that you can kind of understand on their level what they're experiencing more than maybe another special needs teacher might if they didn't, you know, they weren't
Yeah,
autistic.
I think that there is limits to special needs education. I think the people who have the most experience with autistic kids usually are the ones that are the best, not the ones that know more about it or know a lot about teaching implementation and stuff. I feel like the best people are usually the ones that are very open-minded, genuinely kind, wanting to understand and wanting to work with that kid. Those are usually the people who are good at that job.
Mm-hmm. And are you sort of hoping to go on from being a teaching assistant to being like a kind of teacher? Do you want to work your way up in terms of teaching?
I want to be more on the side of like journalism and in the future, of course. And I want to have a platform where I can raise these social issues and statistics that are around in autism to try and do something about it. But my sort of special needs teaching is more of it's more of a job, sort of an in between job. But I've tried my best to make it as relevant to my life goal as possible. So it's a difficult, like it's a really difficult job, and I don't know why. Like sometimes I question it, but it's great to see the positive changes in kids, and it does give me a bit more motivation to get up and stuff.
That's great. I mean, you know, you're helping out these kids, and I can imagine it is quite like difficult work, and it must be quite kind of, you know, it must take up a lot of your energy, but it must be really rewarding to, you know, see these, you know, children even just sort of, you know, understand where you're coming from, and just sort of, you know, even just to be able to see them grow a little bit must be quite rewarding. But it's really interesting to hear that you want to go into journalism more, and you know, I think we're missing, you know, that sort of journalism that fills in the gap of, you know, special needs and autism and, you know, disability in general isn't, you know, it's not that,
We
you know,
we need
seen in the media.
neurodiversity as well as racial diversity. I think definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little bit of a different sort of way of going about it. I did want to jump straight into a journalist job, but there wasn't really anything available at the time, and it's I don't know how I'd feel to leave my current job. I always there's been times where I've worked with a kid for a few weeks and then developed quite a good bond with them, and then obviously had to leave because I'm not needed there. And sometimes that can be very difficult because I do get very attached to the kids that I'm working with. A lot of these kids surprisingly come from a lot of difficult backgrounds as well. I didn't realize just how many kids have sort of checkered backgrounds, even in the place that I'm in my area of the country. And not in checking as in a way they've done something like illegal or something, but you know, they've got family issues or they've had past traumas and stuff. So it's quite enlightening in that way.
Oh, that's really interesting, you know. And okay, you're not working in journalism yet, but this is going to be, you know, fantastic experience. And you know, like my parents are always saying, like, it'll look great on your CV.
My parents do as well.
Yeah, it's like, oh, look great on your CV, more experience. But you know, the more people experience you have, and the more, you know, understanding you have, definitely like of different age groups as well, is really good. So what was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you more about your university, because you touched upon that a little bit. So how did you find kind of studying at uni? Did you live at uni?
I did live at uni. I did, yeah. I lived on campus, and I possibly picked the most low quality place, low quality campus. But it was, it was a bit sort of dodgy. Like the things didn't really work in the room. Like the drawers didn't have handles, some of them, and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, because it was a communal kitchen and a communal bathroom, there was always difficulties around that, with people stacking up things. So I just resorted to sort of paying for the daily sort of meals and stuff that they did in the kitchen.
Okay.
But my particular sort of dorm was heavily infested with drugs. Like it was definitely not the type of place that I would choose to live at, but it did give me a bit of experience with people who are like that. And Manchester, sadly, is a place where that happens a lot. But in terms of general university, I found it really difficult. Like, I liked the assignments and stuff, and I liked learning about it, but there comes a point at which when you have to do an exam, you could know everything under the sun, but if you can't interpret what they're asking you to do in the correct way and say it in the way that they want you to from that small question, it's difficult to get a good mark on it unless the person knows you and knows autism. So that the academic side was hard, but I managed to get an honours.
That's great.
And I didn't find the social aspects very enjoyable at all. I like to be within a class because it forces you to be with certain people all the time. Whereas I was just sort of drifting between lectures and working on my own. Couldn't really socialize with the people in my sort of living arrangements for obvious reasons, and couldn't really find anyone to socialize with, you know, in uni. But it was difficult, yeah. And I said when I was info dumping you earlier that
info dumps are welcome here. It's all good.
I said in my long explanation about my life that it was it was tough, and I had a lot of moments, a lot of periods of time where I was sort of shut indoors, isolated, didn't go out of my room for any other reason than to get food. I got to a point where I was having like constant panic attacks about 5 or 6 times a day, and but I did manage to find some good friends, and obviously the main changing factor for me was going to Thailand and having that experience.
So what made you decide to go there? Was that sort of after uni you thought, you know, that was the sort of next kind of thing you wanted to do?
The funny thing is that was an impulsive thing. It was so ridiculously impulsive. It completely contrasts my personality at the time, because I wouldn't do anything impulsive. It wasn't part of my character, and
Hmm.
it was more of an act of desperation at the time, just to escape. And maybe if I've got a new environment, new sort of life, take a bit of a break from studying, then maybe I'll feel
Hmm.
better. And obviously it has broadened my horizons a lot. It's got me to develop a lot of social skills, got me to think about my life and my meaning and all of that stuff. And it's given me a
Hmm.
good understanding of the world as well, because I went backpacking for about 2 months around Southeast Asia with a mate.
Oh, wow.
And it's not the most relaxing experience, to put it lightly, but it definitely gave me an appreciation for the world a bit more.
Mm. Oh, wow. I mean, that's quite a big thing to do. But like you said, you were kind of craving that
Escape.
change and yeah, and looking for something more. And I guess there's no better time to do that than, just after you're studying and, you can have that sort of break. But that must have been quite sort of eye-opening in terms of, had you done that much traveling before or been abroad
I've been
much before? Not
abroad, but
really.
I'd never really been to places with the express intent of learning about people.
Mm.
When I was traveling, I quite often was the person out of the two of us that started interactions with other travelers, or started conversations with locals to learn about what's been going on in their culture and
Mm.
stuff. And with that sort of direction to learn, it made it a little bit different.
Mm.
I have been traveling before, and I've been to places with my family, but that was more of sort of a leisure type thing,
Mm.
and I wasn't very involved with it
Yeah.
at all. And then other than
Mm.
that, there's the places that I traveled to with Taekwondo, mostly around Europe, but on one occasion I went to Romania, but yeah,
Huh.
it was different though.
I mean, it sounded like you definitely had a shift in terms of being able to approach people and in terms of interacting with people. Kind of at university, you sounded more kind of,
Yeah.
you kept yourself to yourself sort of thing. And it sounds like you really like opened up, like,
Hmm.
traveling. And was that kind of because you were somewhere different and nobody knows you and you were building kind of connections that
Yeah,
sort of way?
I also think it's just, well, I'd never really been a part of a group. I mean, I might have been a part of a group when I was like 12, but that was more just so that I could sort of play games with some friends. It wasn't an, a close forming of bonds from living together with
Mm.
a group of people. And it was really the first group that I was involved with. And because there was such different people, we had some people from London, some people from Yorkshire, some people from um, originally from Romania, someone's from Australia. We had a big sort of melting pot of
Okay.
personalities in our group. And the more that I sort of talked to
Mm-hmm.
them and shared my opinions and listened to them, the more that I realized that, being a part of a group doesn't have to be a bad thing, and that maybe I should give people a chance to explain their sides and be a little bit more open in that sense. And
Mm-hmm.
that sort of fed back into me. So now I just, I can, I'll go on to things and say things about my past that, people wouldn't usually share, but it's something that I've
Mm.
wholeheartedly accepted at this point, and I don't see
Mm-hmm.
any other harm in sharing that with people.
No, exactly. And I think, being yourself online, a lot of people
Hmm.
aren't themselves online. And, you see the best versions of their life and you see the good things. And actually, really, I think a lot of people are just seeking honest and, upfront people, aren't they, really? Especially in terms of, if you're neurodiverse, if you're autistic, just finding someone in the community who is open and says, yeah, I struggle every day and this is what I'm struggling with right now. But, you see the good and the bad sort of thing. And I think that's sort of what you're doing on your many social media platforms, is you're showing, what life is really like, and the struggles, but also, the great things as well about, having a diagnosis.
I do think there are many great things about being autistic. I think the main thing for me, in the videos and the podcast and the social media stuff, is that I'm still open to grow a bit more. I'm not fixed in my beliefs as much as some people on Instagram could be like. And I like to listen to people, and I like to have conversations with people. And although I do a lot of videos about how to cope with situations, how to better yourself, I am giving those videos as from my previous experience and from all that experience that I've had. And the thing is that, I'm only 23 still, so I'm still open to be proved wrong on things that I say or things that I think. And I think that's a big part of why people sort of stick with me, maybe. I don't know, I'm just speculating. You could prove me wrong on that opinion.
No, you go for it. No. So when, just as a bit of background, when did you start kind of your online presence? What made you sort of start it, and how many years have you been going?
I started on YouTube. I originally had a gaming channel, as all sort of a lot of people do. Yep. And I got up to about 164 subscribers, but the quality of them were absolutely shocking. So I decided at some point that I wanted to publish my experiences. And this was more of a platform for sharing parts of my life, or sharing the difficulties that I had, because I didn't really have many people to share this with, or I didn't feel comfortable enough to share this with people directly. And so it was more of a voicing platform for me. It was a way to sort of get my pain and struggles out and sort of take them out of my head. And it was more of sort of like a counselling service for me at the start. And then as it got sort of bigger, and as people started to following me and stuff, I realised that, maybe I've grown quite a lot over these years, and I've learnt a lot of things and come up with some ideas about autism and mental health. And maybe I should sort of be a bit more specific and create videos around a certain topic. And sort of it sort of rolled. And, now my videos are completely different to the videos that I had before, which were just basically about my experiences rather than, trying to offer help or anything.
No, it's a really interesting journey. And I think I can relate to that as well, because I first sort of started out kind of writing a blog on my Instagram, and it was really like a counselling service as well. Like, you were kind of doing it to be like testing the waters, see if anyone else feels the same, like, do people relate to me? And then it sort of grows and you're like, oh, okay, people get me. And that's like a really big thing, isn't it? Just to have people that understand, and people who just, like, I get messages where people are like, you make me feel less alone. And that's huge. Like, it means so much to me that people can relate to, both of our content, and they see themselves in it. And I think that's, especially if you're doing sort of videos and stuff like that, being able to connect, a person to, like, their voice, and just seeing how they live their life is a really big thing.
There is a lot of utility in having, just people that are willing to share negative and positive experiences just for the benefit of bringing people together. And comments
Mm-hmm.
are the best thing about YouTube for me, because it really gives me the subscribers and stuff that I have just write these massively long paragraphs that I feel like most people would probably just skim through. But these paragraphs are really detailed and they have their own experiences, and I learn a lot. There's this one particular person called David who's been a fan of I don't want to say fan, that sounds really um,
No, go for it.
he's been a supporter of mine for a long time, and he's a, sort of in his like 50s 60s, and obviously being autistic and going through that period of time where there wasn't all that support, getting an idea of the similarities between my experience and his and sort of comparing them is always there's always something to gain from that and something new to learn.
Yeah, I think that's also the great thing about it, is that you're connecting with people from different backgrounds, and especially like different age groups or people who are kind of late to diagnosis. And it's really interesting to hear about these people's lives and, how they've come around to understanding themselves. And I mean, some people wait, 40 or 50 years to find out that they're autistic. And I just think, oh, I waited 25 years. That was enough. Like, to not, I mean, obviously you've lived your life and you haven't known any different, but to not sort of know that, you're not alone and you're not weird or different, or, that sort of thing.
It
is quite big, isn't it?
It's more of like you have a reason to why you're so different to everybody. I think just having like a basic, sort of understanding and having basic support around you in school and stuff is quite a good thing for when you grow up, because if there was a lot of times where in secondary school where I'd have meltdowns and stuff, and if I wasn't diagnosed autistic or if they didn't have any sort of special needs provisions, I would probably just be kicked out of school, or I would probably just retreat to the toilets for hours and hours because I find everything too overwhelming. So having that level of support and understanding of myself is a good thing.
That's really good to hear as well, that despite your struggles you were sort of supported in terms of educations and maybe kind of exams and stuff. Did you have like extra time and stuff like that
I
too,
always got up to the last second of the extra time.
Me too. Like, put your pen down.
It makes you paranoid, doesn't it? It's
I'm
like,
still going.
did I answer what they asked me? I've highlighted it. I've gone over it about 5 times. I think this is what they want of me. Then you get the results back and they're like, be more specific to the question. I was like, what are you talking about? Why don't you?
That's like what you said then about kind of university and stuff. Like, it's processing the question, and I have to highlight the question beyond belief to understand.
Yeah, they could just say write about
write.
this system or write about that system. And the funny thing is that the exams that I did the best on, where I got like upwards of 80% on, were those exams that specifically asked you to describe a certain thing, certain pathway, something that a lecture that we've learned. And yeah, it's definitely not built for autistics exams. They're just not at all. I did get a lot of sort of mitigating circumstances for my mental health and stuff, which helped a lot, because it was very difficult to get through the days, and it was very difficult to manage my emotions and make sure that I'm in for exams not panicking and not melting down. It was, the support that I had at uni was good. Maybe a little bit more counselling, but that's just the way that funding goes for these things.
Yeah, I was going to say to you, in terms of counselling, have you had much? Have you kind of gone through the whole NHS trying that and done your own sort of private stuff, or have you
I
have you
had
found
counselling
counselling
for
helpful?
about 5 or 6 years during my teenage years, up until I was about
Mm-hmm.
18, 19. They kept me on for a little bit longer because they felt like I needed some support still. But the counselling did diddly squat. Did nothing. Absolutely nothing. It gave me a place to talk, but I was confronted with a person who didn't really get me and kept trying to push these strange ways of coping with stress on me that just didn't really get to the issue. And you know what, to be honest, looking back on it, I was very closed and I didn't want to tell them about anything, and because I didn't know them, which is a big thing, if I don't, yeah. Because if you don't like someone,
Fair
you don't
enough.
want to talk to them about your innermost
Yeah,
pains and thoughts, especially when you're a teenager.
exactly. You gotta, you need to trust the person.
Definitely,
If
yeah.
you, I see what you mean. Kind of, I've also found the same with counselling. It just brings everything to the surface and all your feelings, and I just come home and be like overwhelmed with having brought things up again, and kind of like you said, you've got to trust the person in order to open up. And I think also in terms of counselling, unless they are specialists, they're not going to understand your kind of autistic traits and stuff like that. I've had a therapist say before, I can't take you further. I can't take you on anymore because you're displaying these autistic traits, and it's just a bit crushing. You're like, but I'm here,
I think
I'm paying you.
this is a really big problem. For one of the main problems that I feel like we need to change. There is no specialist counsellors for autistic people, and the specialist counsellors are like in London,
No.
or they're in like they're massively expensive, which is ridiculous considering the unemployment rate among autistic people rather. And
Yeah, that's true.
I couldn't even find one. My mum couldn't even find one when I was younger, and we had the funds to do it, but it was just too busy, and they just didn't have any openings. So it definitely is one of the major problems with how society is run. It just feels like with so many issues around autism, it just feels like everything's just swept under the rug, and it's just people lump in autism with you're disabled, so you must feel bad, rather than I'm autistic. I get along with life pretty well, but I have these bad mental health issues. They don't see it like that now. They just see it as you're autistic. Oh no, poor you.
But there's so many varying not degrees, or a spectrum, or however you want to call it, that everyone is different. You might have someone who's autistic and can hold down a job and seems to be functioning just fine, but actually someone like me who can hold down a job, I still want to talk to someone. I still want I still struggle every day, even though I'm not showing it. Whereas someone who is more higher functioning, or however you want to say it, who struggles every day, they
it's
I
like,
get what you're saying. It's just not accessible, is it?
I think a good way to put it into perspective, like I think about 1 or 2% of the population is on the autistic spectrum, and 1 in 3 people with autism have severe mental health conditions. That's a lot of people, and there's not a lot of services available to do that and to deal with that. And it's awful, and it just baffles me to why it's not such a major issue, but it's not, is it?
No. And I also find, in terms of going to the doctors and having mental health issues and being autistic, is you have to try so many antidepressants, or
I'm on 2 right now.
Antipsychotics. Same here. But did it take you a while to find?
I still don't know if it is working.
Right.
Like, I don't think it's working well enough. But it has taken me a while. I'm on citalopram right now, and I think it's working best because I've tried quite a lot of antidepressants, and my mum, my family member, has been on them for a long time, and it's worked for them, and they didn't have many side effects. So I thought, hey, this might be a good idea. But anxiety is not managed very
Yeah.
well. There's nothing really that I can do about it. But I have been recently sort of buying like CBD to help with it. It definitely
Okay.
just does
How have you
help,
found that?
and it helps with sleep as well. And I find that it makes life just a little bit
Oh, okay.
easier to cope with, and it keeps my brain a little bit less active than it usually is in its sort of hyperactive state. But it's also a matter of money as well, because obviously I've got to buy it. It's not a prescription. I got a prescription,
Yeah.
and then I've got to get, I've got to pay for exercise to keep me happy. I've got to pay for, magnesium supplements and all of that stuff. And I've got to pay for CBD, which is if you want something that's effective and, good enough and strong enough to work on someone, then you've got to pay for that, and you've got to fork out for it. And it's a lot of issues with money, to be honest, at this stage.
Yeah. I mean, even just a prescription is like £9, and that's just for one medication, isn't it? And if you need it, monthly or every 2 weeks, it just adds up so quick.
I think there is something that you can do with prescriptions. Have you ever heard of a prescription prepayment plan? You should definitely look that up, because you can pay about £27 for 3 months, and all of your prescriptions within that time are free.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Just pretty much, but
pay ahead almost, sort of
get
thing.
prescriptions every week that will cost you 16 quid or something, but it would all just come down to £27 for every 3 months. Yeah. I only knew about it recently, so you can get yearly ones as well.
Okay, so even just that would just take the pressure off a bit.
I think getting that prepayment certificate would be good.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's just also like, keeping on top of like stuff like that, like making sure you order it in enough time and stuff like that. And, as autistic people, we have enough to like remember and, just cope with in daily life. And just like keeping on top of all these little things is, I don't think,
there's executive functioning.
It goes slightly unrecognised.
Skills. And then also, if you've got mental health conditions, no motivation or distractibility or from anxiety and stuff.
Also, I'm just awful at remembering if I've just taken something or not.
Yeah, it's like, horrible when that happens, isn't it? Because you feel like you should take it, but should I? I didn't know if I did. Should I take another one? But I can't take another one, because even if I did, then I'm gonna have like serotonin syndrome or something.
Yeah, you're just gonna have like twice as much. Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one who's just like, did I just take this?
Fairly frequently. This is kind of when you're taking it for so long in your life. It's just like, so it's like 7 or 8 years for me being on some form of drug, and it's
it's mad, isn't it? I've been on sort of antidepressants since I was 16, and I've last year I started to feel slightly more stable, and I went to them and I was like, I'd really like to kind of start dropping down off one of the medications I'm on too. And they were like, oh, why? I was like, because ideally I don't really want to be on them for the rest of my life. And if I can, it would be great if I could eke it down slowly. I'm not stopping it or anything like that. And they were really like, oh wow. I was like, well, I've been on it for years and you've never reviewed it. And stuff like that, you just sit on medication sometimes, unless you sit in front of a doctor and say, I'm struggling, I'd like to up my dose, or, I'm doing okay, I'd like to come off it.
I think in every case, people are different, and I've tried to come off medication before, and it's always had disastrous results for me. I think my sort of physiological level of whatever hormones make you happy are just so low that it's ridiculous. Like, and I have tried coming off them,
Okay.
couldn't do it, despite all the work that I have done to improve myself and build a life for myself and cover every single aspect of well-being and happiness that I can. I still feel awful, and I think if I was going to come off antidepressants, it would be a long time in the future for me, definitely. But of course, like,
Mhm.
there are always ways that I can improve more. It's just currently it's not really something that I feel like I can do.
But at least in a way you're aware of that, and you've kind of come to terms with the idea that, at the moment it is helping you, and at the moment, okay, you're still trying to find the right levels and stuff like that, but you kind of know that it's not the right time for you to come off anything. And I think even for me, I'm still on both. I mean, one of them slightly less, but I'm not, I'd love to not be on any,
Have
but
you ever
they do help when you find the
noticed
right
that
ones.
when
They do
you're on
help.
antidepressants, because with autism it makes it difficult to perceive and notice and understand your own emotions. Antidepressants make that worse, don't they?
Yeah.
I find it so difficult,
I think so.
just to know what I'm feeling. And when I'm on antidepressants, I can't reach the highs of happiness that I could do when I'm not. It makes you feel a little bit like
Yes, I know what you mean.
a psychopath or something, because you just obviously you're not, and if your emotions affect your behavior and all of that stuff, and you have a lot of empathy towards people, but you don't perceive your emotions as much, and it can be quite difficult sometimes for me, I think. Would you agree with that?
I think so, definitely. And when I had my autism assessment, the assessor actually said something that I didn't realize about myself. I don't know if you've heard of alexithymia. It means you have the inability to identify or describe your feelings, sort of things. And she really got that impression from me. And it was only once you read about it where it's you don't have words for your feelings, and it's very hard to put how you're feeling into words. And she said that might be, there isn't a proper test for it or anything, but that might be something that I experience. It's worth reading about, and I definitely get what you're saying, because you don't know what emotion sometimes, and you don't know how to label it.
In general, the only two real emotions that I mostly feel is depression and anxiety. But no, it sounds like being a bit defeatist in that fashion, but it's more like I base how my day is based on how not so bad my mental health is. And obviously I do feel excitement and happiness on the odd occasion, as much as everyone else would, I suppose, but just not to a considerable extent, or not enough to surpass all those negative emotions.
And it's hard to hold on to that feeling as well, that when there is a good day or a good moment, you forget how it feels.
Backtrack and think about how something felt for you in the past. Or sometimes when I feel I have a good day, I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm like, I'm fine. I don't have depression, anxiety. I'm just being over dramatic. And then when I'm in complete lows of depression,
you talk yourself out
I'm like,
of it.
how have I ever been happy? How the opposites. Yeah.
No, I totally get what you mean. So what, going slightly more kind of your life at the moment, so what kind of brings you joy at the moment? What's
my passions?
What do you enjoy in life? What are your passions?
I think, as I've said, basically my granddad passed away when I was in Thailand, and he said some things to me before he passed away,
Okay.
and he told me to stay in Thailand. He told me to keep on learning, and he told me to help people.
Oh wow.
So that has been my motto, basically, for all that I do. You know, I've decided not to sort of play around with the idea of early death or anything, and that's sort of out of my mind now. And so, in terms of feeling joy, my passions just are around that. That's what I do. I've taken on board what he says, and I agree with it. And it's a really big driving factor for me. I've got his ring that he wore when he was from about the age of 22, which is around the time that I got it, and I'm wearing that, and it sort of gives me a reminder of my sort of what I should do and what I'm drawn to. But in terms of like things that I like to do and brings my attention and makes me sort of distracts me from real life, I like writing. I'm writing a book currently, which is a fictional novel. It's
I saw you started an Instagram for that.
artificial_blackbird.
Cool. I'm following.
It used to be called Heartland until I realised just how many books and series and films are called Heartland, so it's kind of ruined that name for me. But yeah, it's a funny one, and I'm trying to keep it as something that I enjoy doing. I'm not, because I have a tendency of sort of planning out and saying I'm going to do this amount every day, whereas it's more like, oh, I've got some time here, I could just wind down, do some writing. And I don't have any. I have a rough outline, but I don't have a set in stone plan. So the writing is more of a. It's more exciting because even I don't know what's happening, so I'm just going like making it up as I go along and trying to stick to the story as much as possible. Pretty much.
You're going with the flow. That sounds good. That sounds less kind of pressure on yourself.
Other than that,
something that you can enjoy.
I enjoy talking, so I enjoy things like this, and I enjoy going on radio shows and any opportunity for me to talk, but not so much. I'm not so much into the editing side of it. I find it very tedious. So I'm hoping at some point that I won't have to do that, and I can just talk, and people can edit it for me. But and then other than that,
that's the dream.
I box now, so I sort of damaged my knee when I was in Thailand on a moped. It's another story, but so I sort of quit doing taekwondo, and I've been boxing to sort of pass the time, but I've actually got quite into it, and the coaches there want to sort of take me further with that. But I always enjoy combat sports, so it brings me a lot of joy, I guess, if joy is the right word for a sport that's all about bludgeoning people in the head. I don't know. Yeah.
I know what you mean. Like it's like a kind of
definitely
big release of energy, and I mean that's a lot of different things that you enjoy, and a range of things that you are skilled in and good at. And it's great that you're kind of finding out what suits you and what you kind of want to do more of. And it sounds like you've tried a bit of everything in terms of sports and hobbies and things like that. And just being able to write a book is, that must be really interesting and nice in a way that it's not like a school assignment, and it's something you can come back to every so often.
Definitely.
And properly enjoy rather than feel that pressure all the time. So in terms of kind of, I know we should probably wrap this up. In terms of daily life at the moment, how are you coping with you kind of autism and stuff like that, and how relationships and friends and stuff like that?
I think definitely in terms of friendships, I mean, my friendships are usually very fragmented anyway. I don't usually make friends with groups. I make friends with individual people, and so it's quite hard to get people together or And especially with work, it's hard to organize a date for some people to travel up to me or for me to travel down to them. And so it's very difficult in that sense. And I don't have particularly a lot of close friends in Harrogate. And in terms of that, I do call them and we interact and all of that kind of stuff. But I think I definitely need to develop some friendships. But I guess the people at boxing would probably be my, sort of loose friendship group, I suppose. In terms of relationships, I have a girlfriend right now, and she's awesome, and she's really great. And so sometimes I think I've got to a point where I know what I'm capable of, and I know what I can't work on, and I know what I can work on in terms of myself and how I interact with people. And I am at a very stable point where I can say, I've done enough work on myself. I feel like I'm about 10, 20 years older than everybody. It's hard to find someone who I feel like is on the same level of maturity as me. So it's good that I've found that girlfriend. That girlfriend. That sounds horrible. I don't know how much of a way to say it.
That girlfriend.
Yeah,
I know what you meant. You found the right person for you. And that's like half the battle, isn't it? Is finding someone who will accept you for you and that you don't have to change for. And, relationships are really difficult anyway, if you're autistic. And just having someone who's, understanding and accepting and willing to kind of,
definitely. I think
learn more. Yeah.
In terms of like mental health, I'm sort of at a point where I've accepted that I feel a certain way on certain days. It never gets any easier. It never gets easier to cope with the symptoms of the illnesses. But I have a good idea of what it's going to feel like and what I'm going to have to do and all of that. It's just trying to sort of push through those bad periods of time, especially like during the winter periods and stuff. But I've got my goal and I've got my reason to be around. So I'm not going anywhere as of now.
That's great. That's so good. And I'm glad to hear that you feel like you're at a more kind of stable point and that, I know what you mean about feeling way more mature than you like your actual age and stuff like that. But, that's kind of...
Yeah.
I think a lot of autistic people are probably like that. You just... You learn so much from other people and take on so many behaviours and stuff like that you feel like you've lived so much longer. So I guess we should probably...
Yeah, well, it's up to you. Like, if you want to ask any more questions or anything, I'm happy to.
I think the only other thing that was on my kind of list of stuff to mention was about you being a fidget bum ambassador, and I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that and if that's something you're using every day.
It's kind of funny because I was contacted by a lady called Anna Kennedy. I don't know if you know her, but she's a very successful author. She's an OBE. She's set up 2 special needs schools. She's a very big person in the world of autism, and she asked me to sort of come onto her radio show in Covent Garden, London, and that was awesome.
I saw that on Twitter.
And there were a few people a few sort of companies on her page that she was supporting. So I checked into one of them, which was Fidget Bomb, and sort of shot them a message and asked about the product and stuff and whether they'd like to come talk about it on my podcast. And yeah, they sent me one of these products, which is basically like a replacement for a weighted blanket. And it's the best way that I can think of to describe it is sort of like a very stretchy compression sock for your bed. And it's so much more cooler. It's
Okay.
like as in like temperature wise. And it's cool, of course. And it's very stretchy and comfortable,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
it doesn't restrict your movements. And I just thought that it was such a good idea. Like, it's such an ingenious idea, because it's really hard to travel with weighted blankets. They're not
Yes.
always the most comfortable, and I've
So
got
true.
one and I just never use it because it's just useless, because I just feel like something's crushing me rather than compressing me. And so I met up with Mel, which I believe is the company director, and she asked me if I wanted to become an ambassador for Fidget Bum. And of course, I think it's a great idea, and I feel like it would give me a lot of opportunity to work with them in the future and do some sort of more media type things, and go on and talk about the product on like TV shows and stuff in the future, hopefully. But yeah, it's great, and I think anybody who's listening, I think you should definitely go check out Fidget Bum if you struggle with sleep, which I know is a big issue in in the world of autism.
It really is. I'll definitely have to check them out. I sleep with a weighted blanket, but I get too hot just all the time, and I feel like if I could get the same level of compression with
they're looking for
like,
testers,
this Fidget Bum thing, then
so
that would be
if
good.
you get in contact,
And in terms of
they might sort of want you to do like a testimonial or something, or they might just give you a like a discount or something for it.
Okay. They're going to hook me up. Okay. I'll have to have a look, because it's something that I've heard about and also like seen you talking about and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, that does. It would be a lot better,
Definitely.
especially in summer.
You can wear it with the blanket
do not
and
work
stuff,
in
so
summer.
it's not like you'll get hot or cold or anything.
Okay.
No worries.
Yeah. Okay.
All repping the brand.
That. Well, thanks for letting us know about that. In terms of repping the brand, did you, as we kind of wrap up, do you want to kind of mention where people can find you on the internet, and kind of
so
where you
I think the main
kind of
port of call would probably
stuff?
be my Instagram page, which is at Aspergers Growth, and I've got like a link tree sort of link that sort of take you to all the the YouTube stuff and the podcast and the Fidget Bum stuff and all of that.
Okay.
But then if you just want to go straight to the other things, there's my main page on YouTube, Aspergers Growth, and then on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts is the 40 Auti podcast. And then obviously I've got my sort of general social media on Facebook and Twitter, and they're all at Aspergers Growth. So it's quite easy to get in contact.
Okay, so I better wrap it up. I mean, it was really nice to talk to you, and thank you for being so honest and really open. It means a lot, and I think it shows, how genuine a person you are.
It always lifts me up, chatting about what I'm passionate about and stuff. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
No worries, and good luck with all your kind of, journalism and writing books and stuff like that. I'm excited to see your new, your books kind of potential on Instagram and stuff. I'll be following along. Cool. Okay, so I guess we should
see you later,
bye.
guys.
So thanks for listening, and tune in next time.